think probably that you will find that most people have been taken by some individual who is supposedly a person of great beauty or great intelligence or any number of other things. And I think that it's important to talk about that idea. And I started with the idea of what pretty isn't, and it's actually expanded a little bit on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I'm Kurt. Today is Thursday, the 29th of July of 2021. Welcome to everybody who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, and on YouTube as usual. Again, Rumble is my preferred platform, as I'm sure most of you pretty well know. I'm trying things a little bit differently today. You may hear a little bit of background noise. Hopefully you will become accustomed to that as time goes on, because I think I'm going to have to let things happen if I don't want my video to freeze as I'm attempting to do my videos, because it's starting to get so warm outside at the moment. It's probably around 100 at the high today, 100, 101, somewhere in there. But I do want to talk about what pretty isn't. That's going to be the thing that I'm going to talk about, and we're going to start by going through my notes. It's easy to decide you like or want to be around others because they're attractive. If you've strode down that path, you've probably reached the same conclusion I have. There are a whole bunch of things pretty isn't. To be fair, just because someone has some sort of draw on you, or for that matter anybody, doesn't make them bad or evil in some way. That said, more than a few people out there who are looked up to for looks or other attributes that are more or less gifts, funnily enough this includes things like intelligence, really have little else to offer than the attributes in question. Being blunt, having people like or follow you for one reason or other, maybe more than one even, does not make you somebody worth all that hubbub. Being pretty, for example, doesn't make you smart, principled, wise, or so many other things, right? Etc., etc., etc. Here's the kicker. Being wise doesn't make you good. You may think that handsome or even intelligent person is worth following. As for me, I suggest a sort of hierarchy. At the top would be good, not winsome, nor even necessarily wise. Obviously, a wise, good person would be nice. Beauty, though, other than internally, is pretty low on the attractive attributes list, where I'm concerned. Is she pretty? One day, chances are, she's either going to be old and no longer so physically alluring, or alternatively, no longer around at all. Put simply, there are many properties one might find interesting in a person that doesn't mean they're worth your time or effort as a result. And that's the end of my notes. So we're going to get on with the actual discussion. I think that just about everybody has idolized people who seem to have properties or attributes that they looked at and thought that were wonderful, right? Oh, she's so pretty. Oh, he's so handsome. Oh, she's so wise. Oh, he's so smart, right? And all the various things that you might say. The problem is these things are, in my mind, sort of at varying levels in the hierarchy of what I desire in people, and the highest of these is good and correct and right and so forth, right? It is not wise, it is not intelligent, it is not beautiful, it is not handsome, it's not gracious, it's not any of these things. Many people have heard of I don't think it was Bing Crosby. I think it was one of the guys that he used to work with a lot, Fred Astaire. Well, it's said that Fred was really mean to his kids. Now, I don't know if that's true. I can't answer that. Nobody really knows. But just for a second, let's assume that it's true, that he was really mean and really hard to get along with, and that he said mean things to his children and so forth. The fact that he was a graceful, by lots of people's standards, handsome man does not mean that Fred was a wonderful human being to be around. I don't know if Fred's still around these days or not. Now, let's be clear. Am I saying that I know that all of this is true for Fred? I'm not. I'm simply using an example of something that I've heard that may not be true at all. But the point is I can still talk about the ideas in the example. And the idea in this particular instance is graceful, handsome, slender, lithe, all of the various things that you might want to attribute to a dancer, right? But maybe mean, maybe rude, maybe ignorant, maybe arrogant, and it's so very hard to know, right? But the more important thing is this. Who do you count worthy of your time and effort? Is it somebody who's graceful? Is it somebody who's handsome? Is it somebody who's beautiful? And are those really things that you probably ought to be considering all that worthwhile? This is really sort of the question for me and the thing that I'm thinking about and trying to figure out. And by the way, it also makes an obvious additional question worth asking, and it is, who am I and where do I fit on the scale of people that I believe ought to be lauded, ought to be looked up to, and so forth? Because if I'm not a person who meets those standards, it's a lot harder for me to do that for other people, isn't it? So obviously, part of the point here is, who am I? Who am I? Am I a good person? Am I a person who tries to be reasonable, proper, and help other people out and do things for people and all of the various things that you think are reasonable? But that having been said, the subject is what pretty isn't, and the answer is there are so many things that pretty isn't that you could spend quite a lot of time looking at them, thinking about them, and so forth. And this is what I want to kind of bring forth today. This is what I want to consider. You need to decide what you're going to covet in people you hang around with. Are they positive? Well, that's okay, I suppose. But are they good? That's way more important in my opinion. And people are going to agree and disagree on various things. But I think that, among them, the definition of the idea of good, right? But I think that the one thing that we should agree on is that when people get old, that attractiveness that they had when they were young doesn't necessarily, in fact, doesn't usually probably, stick around for those people, and they start to become less and less attractive. You can look at a lot of the ladies who were pin-up girls in early days, and you can see them now and you can go, yeah, not so pretty. But the thing is, that's not necessarily something that you should care about anyway. Is that really something you should be worrying yourself over? Probably not. The reality is you probably shouldn't have been worrying yourself over them if you were, on the basis of the fact that they were pretty to begin with. Yeah, pretty's nice. Pretty is desirable to a lot of people, particularly younger people. But as we get older, we begin to realize that pretty is not only not the be-all, end-all. In fact, pretty is not really all that desirable a thing, particularly as people start to get older, and when the age gets on them, they start to look like a whole lot less. But more importantly, if you're around a bunch of pretty people who are mean, ignorant, arrogant, foolish people, and who are anything but good, are they really people that you want to admire and you want to hang out with? Is that really what you want? Because I'm here to tell you that's, in my mind, is not a reasonable thing. Now, of course, you have to make up your decision, your mind for yourself. You have to make your decisions. But the reality is, when you're around people who, though they seem like good or people that you want to be around, maybe it's because where you're setting your standards is kind of broken, right? And I'm going to say this again. Look, almost everything I bring to you because I have suffered the consequences of, in one way or another, of the exact thing I'm talking about. I probably looked at people and thought, oh, that person is pretty, and acted badly, acted incorrectly as a result of the fact that I was willing to accept the person's prettiness as something important. So don't think that I'm not saying that. So remember, what is pretty? Well, it's pretty. What isn't pretty? There are so many things that we could not begin to cover them. And the point is, the person may be pretty and have those other attributes, and then again, they might not. They might not. Okay, I need to go ahead and wrap up, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. This is the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host. I am Kurt. Today is Thursday, the 29th of July of 2021. Thanks to everybody who has been here on Rumble, on the podcast, and on YouTube. Remember, Rumble is my preferred platform. You can give me a positive Rumble on Rumble. You can give me a negative Rumble if you want to do that. You can give me a thumbs up or a like or a thumbs down or a dislike on YouTube. And keep in mind that you can comment on either Rumble or YouTube. And your doing so may very well help me to decide whether or not the things that I'm talking about are things that people like and care about, and whether there are some things that I'm not considering and so forth that I ought to be. Today's subject has been what pretty isn't. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the subject of it takes a virologist? Question mark, right? That's because this is something that I think we need to consider, and I think that a lot of people have some things wrong, and this is partially related to COVID-19, but partially not. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call this good. I hope you're having a good day today and that everything is going well for you. Today is Thursday, as I've said. That means tomorrow will be that end of the week day for a lot of people. They'll consider the weekend starting, and for the people who observe the Sabbath, they'll consider, I think, the Sabbath starting on that day as well. Hope you're doing well, as I say, and hopefully I will see you again on tomorrow's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This video was recorded on Thursday, the 29th of July of 2021. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I hope you found it entertaining or instructional, or maybe both. If you want to see more from me, you can go to blogs.kpschubert.com. That's blogs.kpschubert.com. I am on Twitter, Parler, and Minds.com. My handle on each of those is @kpschubert. That's @kpschubert. I have a Rumble and a YouTube channel. They are the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble and YouTube. I have a Facebook page. The Facebook page is Kurt's Religion and Politics as well. I am on Patreon. If you want to support me, that's one of the better places you can do that. And you will find me at Kurt's Religion and Politics on Patreon. I have a podcast. The podcast is podcasts with an S. .kpschubert.com. That's podcasts.kpschubert.com. I think you should be able to find me with relative ease on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify as well. The best way I find to do that is to look for Kurt's Religion and Politics. You can try to use the Daily Summation. I find that it doesn't work as well as a general rule, but you can always try that. I'm glad to have you aboard today, and hopefully we will see you again tomorrow.